You've touched me in ways I can't begin to describe. No matter what happens, I will always be here for you. Those words were written by a 40-year-old man to a 13-year-old girl during their 8-month affair. The mother of that young girl says that as a parent, she made a terrible mistake that she cannot take back.
Our family is just the very typical Midwestern family, and we're living in a community that we just felt was so safe and wonderful. Everybody knowing one another, feeling like everyone was looking out for everyone. Megan, my daughter, began softball in her kindergarten year and became really close with the girls on the team. And then her 7th grade, a new man in the neighborhood, Barry Ramsey, moved in, and he was going to coach the team. Some weeks later, Barry Ramsey dropped Megan off after a practice and began talking with Megan, and I saw an interaction that you would see between people that are perhaps dating or in relationship, and something shot right through me that something is not right. As we call it, a woman's intuition, and it was so strong. I told my husband, something's not right.
My reaction was, this guy is, respected member of the community, and his daughter's on the team, he's the coach. What could be the problem?
And shrugged it off, so then I did too.
I thought Coach Barry, he was a really cool guy. He was fun to hang out with. One afternoon, he kissed me. I think I was nervous, I was excited. It was a weird mix of feelings because I knew it was wrong, but I liked it at the same time.
The second chance of acting upon my intuition came at the end of the season when the coach invited the entire team over to his house to spend the night for a sleepover. And I felt instantly no. But my husband and my daughter and the other mothers were all supportive of it. And so, against my better thoughts, I did allow her to go.
Barry and I were emailing each other on a regular basis. We talked on Instant Messenger. He had written me an email and my parents found it.
Megan is my stepdaughter. The first email said things along the lines of, Megan, you've touched me in ways I could never imagine. There will always be a place in my heart for you. The tone of it was very disturbing. We did get the police involved. They determined there had been some kissing and hugging, but they had not crossed the line.
At first he denied it. After talking a little while, he finally broke down. And he actually sat across the table from me and cried and told me how horrible it was and it would never happen again.
So they ordered him to not coach again. They ordered him to seek counseling and to never have any contact with Megan after that.
It was about a month after the police got involved that he recontacted me. It was over Instant Messenger. That's when the more physical relationship began. When I say physically active, I mean that we were having sex.
Susan and her husband, Dave, had no idea that their 13-year-old daughter, Megan, and her 40-year-old softball coach were having sex.
Barry and I were sexually intimate 3 to 4 times a week. I started coming over to his house a lot. My parents wouldn't know where I was.
She would tell us that she was going to go study with some friends.
I started telling my parents that I was at a friend's house or somewhere that I really wasn't.
On several occasions, she was supposed to be at drama practice.
Rehearsals were getting canceled a lot. I would call him at work, and he would come home early.
She took up jogging, and she was never a jogger. And we didn't follow up on these little signs.
He used to tell me all the time that he was so in love with me and that we were going to get married. I mean, we used to even joke around about having kids together. But he never thought of me as a 13-year-old when he was with me. He was very nervous about people finding out. He always told me that if anyone were to find out, his life would be ruined. He'd lose his job, his house, his kids. After a couple months, relationships started to fall apart. He didn't really want to talk to me anymore. He stopped telling me that he loved me.
We really tried to constantly check the emails.
She had composed this letter to a teen chat forum stating, I'm a 14-year-old, I have been harassed by older men in my life, and because of one of them, I am no longer a virgin. That hit me like a ton of bricks because this confirmed that she'd been having sexual relations with a 40-year-old man.
He was engaging in sexual intercourse with our daughter. It is every parent's worst nightmare.
The detectives actually had Megan phone Mr. Ramsey,
He said, they're going to want to know why you're not a virgin.
and they recorded that phone call. That proved to be key because he really incriminated himself on that tape.
Charges were filed, and he eventually pled guilty in court.
They indicted him on 10 counts of gross sexual imposition.
Mr. Ramsey was sentenced to 4 years in jail.
My emotional state at the time of the trials, it was very unstable. I felt like I was turning my back on someone I cared a lot about. I went to the hospital. Barry doesn't care. No one must care. It's not even worth it to try and stick this out. And I wanted to die.
We wish so much that we could roll the clock back to that day when I had the feeling the biggest mistake of my life was not acting upon that intuition that nature gives us to protect ourselves and our children.
So this is Susan, her husband Dave, and their daughter Megan. Why do you say this was your biggest mistake?
It altered my daughter's future for the rest of her life. It impacted our family, our community. The grief has just gone on and on. It's endless.
Well, the reason why this show so interested me, and I know as I was watching, a lot of the moms in the audience, everybody's gasping because this is your worst nightmare. But the thing to get from this lesson is that everybody has an instinct. And it always comes in the form of almost like a little whisper, like oh, that was odd. Like the moment you said you saw them and you thought that they're acting like...
That is exactly what I thought.
Yes.
I saw their eye contact, even just the way he positioned himself with her. And knew, and I told my husband immediately, there's something wrong.
Yeah. And when she told you it was something wrong, you thought what? You
thought she
talked
was
her out of
nuts.
it. Why?
Because this guy, I didn't know him very well, but I had gotten to know him throughout the season. And he was very educated. He had a terrific career. He was very sports-oriented like I am. He was a terrific golfer, even though we never played. Also, he has 2 daughters, one who played with Megan. I just thought, you know, this is someone we entrust with her.
Did not fit your profile as of a child molester.
Couldn't fit anyone's.
Exactly. You're thinking it's going to be the sleazy guy in the corners waiting to come out.
And so more than anything, that is the message of your mistake, is that child molesters are people that we all know, and a lot of them are well-read and intelligent, and they're not walking around in their trench coats, you know, flashing people. Yeah. So you said he's too well-respected, and so you listened to him.
I did, but I still had it in the back of my mind and tried to keep an eye out.
Why didn't you just confront her? Why didn't you confront Megan and say, what's going on here?
That's a good question. I think I wasn't being diligent enough with that information. And that is my message to every parent. Do not be afraid to go and confront these feelings that you have. Go after it.
You were afraid
follow
to
it up.
ask your own daughter because of what? Were you afraid of what the answer might be?
That could very well be the truth. We knew something was wrong, and I felt like she would deny it. I didn't know that I would get the truth from her.
Yeah, I think you confronted me, and most of the time I was lying about what was going on. So if she did ask me, like, where were you? You know, we didn't see you on the trail. Well, I stopped over at my friend's house, you know, of course.
Now, I find it interesting that none of you describe this as sexual abuse, because to me, it's classic sexual abuse.
I think it is. It was just at the time that it was happening, I felt like it was a love connection. I felt like he was in love with me and I was in love with him. Today, I feel like it was definitely sexual abuse.
Okay, yeah. Because even for me to use the term affair, that you were having an affair with him, feels wrong, because in my opinion, there are lots of young girls out there, as you all know, I was one of them, that, you know, for one reason or another, get seduced. And that's what sexual molestation obviously is in the end. It's seduction, should be called sexual seduction. And then because you are seduced and you are so young and you have no knowledge about what's going on, you start to think it's love. But it is the adult responsibility at all times, regardless. The adult responsibility is to be in charge and not seduce young girls. So therefore, I have a problem calling it an affair that you had with him. So I will refer to it as during the time, the 8 months where you were molested by him.
Okay.
Okay? What was going on with you?
During those 8 months, I felt like I had found my soulmate, someone who I could talk to and who would listen to me. Previously, when I first started just hanging out with him, my best friend and I had gotten into a fight. I was just kind of looking for someone to hang out with, be able to talk to, and he was perfect. I mean, we talked about everything. That's just how it started out, just innocent hanging out. We were talking about everything. And eventually it started to move forward. And it was all new to me. And so I was pretty excited about it because it's new and different. And, oh, I like this guy, and he must really like me too, because that's what you do when you like each other, right?
Had you ever, I mean, you weren't even dating, right?
I'd had boyfriends, but, you know, the junior high boyfriend where you're like, yeah, I have a boyfriend.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. But not, like, sexually involved?
No.
Not seriously going out? You had restrictions on your ability to see boys?
Yes.
Okay. And so never even occurred to you to tell your parents, because the idea for you was it was stimulating?
Yeah. I didn't want to tell my parents because I felt like I needed him so I could be myself in a way.
Interestingly enough, though, all through that time, she was telling me, I don't know who I am. You don't know who I really am. And I just thought it was adolescence. But I think it was her trying to tell us that something was going on. I need you to listen to me. I need you to be there for me.
Okay, so after he first went to the police and was told to not make any contact with you, you felt what?
I was upset because I admitted to it, admitted that we had been kissing, and I felt really upset, like I had betrayed him and that he would hate me.
That's the power of sexual seduction and molestation. That's the power of it. And I know there are millions of other women who are watching, and those of you in the audience, that's the power of it, to make you feel like you are also complying.
Right.
In your 13-year-old mind, would you say that you were in love with him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you were in love with him. And you wanted to marry him?
Yes, I definitely wanted to marry him.
And he had, what, children your age?
He had 2 daughters. One was my age and one is 2 years younger than me. I sometimes thought about that, about his girls. But whenever I asked him about it, he'd just be like, oh, it doesn't matter. It'll work itself out.
Now, sitting where you are, your 15-year-old self, which I think is really brave of you to come on and talk about this, because most people don't want to say it. And the power of sexual abuse in this country is, I've said this many times, is that most parents feel like their kids are going to tell them, but parents don't understand the power of first sexual attraction. And so think about it yourself, however old you were when that first happened. The problem with sexual abuse, sexual seduction, is that when you're young and you've never felt it before, it feels good. It feels good. And that is very often never said.
Yeah.
But it feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so you wanted it to continue.
Oh, yeah.
And let me just say that by saying that it feels good doesn't make it any less wrong. Right.
Right.
Okay. And so you now feel what as your 15-year-old self? Looking back at yourself, your
Looking back,
participation in it?
I deal with it every day, and it's still hard for me to know, were my feelings genuine, were his? You know, it's something that is very conflicting, but I look back on it, and I see all the signs there now of how he was taking advantage of me.
Yeah.
And I think that's a hard part for me.
You know what? We did a show. I did interview sexual abusers and molesters, seducers a while back. And even at my age, it was shocking for me to hear how calculated it is.
Oh, yeah.
It is a calculated act.
It is unbelievably calculated.
You're looking for a young, naive girl such as yourself.
Yeah.
And calculating what kind of move to make and how to make the move.
When I was in the hospital, one of the first things they told me about sexual abusers is that they can walk into a room and determine who has the low self-esteem, who will be easy enough to take advantage of.
And so when you were in the hospital, you realized that that kind of seduction, that kind of calculated, I'm going to see if I can touch her knee first, and then I'll see if I can touch her hair first, and then I'll accidentally brush up against her shoulder, and then if she doesn't say anything, then I'll go a little further.
Yeah. That's exactly. And when...
Do you see that you were used and manipulated?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you now
and
see
that was at the hospital. That's where it all came through. I mean, they were taking me step by step, and what they call it grooming. How they say, you know, they get the victim to trust them.
Right.
And then they'll start with the kissing. If that's okay, we'll move a little further. And then if you're still comfortable with that, we'll keep going. And it's until they get tired of you.
And how do you feel about that now?
It makes me so angry. I cannot tell you. And it makes me upset because now I have girls who I never even knew coming up to me and telling me, you know, this has been happening to me. What should I do? And it's just like, oh my gosh, how can this still be happening today? It blows my mind.
And what do you say, Susan?
Long journey, a long journey. I hope that we can become more aware of it and that people can actually understand that these children are victims.
Yeah.
Because I've had to hear from...
She wanted it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
But the reason why this story so fascinates me because I want America to know this is what it looks like. You know, my own friends, I remember when their children were younger and I'd say, you know, chances are your daughter won't tell you. And my friends would say, of course my daughter would tell because it'd be so painful, it's so awful, because we have this idea, like you have, that it's going to be a horrible, torturous thing. And of course, there are many times in this country when that does happen. But the face of sexual seduction and abuse in this country, this is what it looks like. It's uncles and cousins and coaches and fathers and stepfathers and relatives and friends who are trusted, who are smart, who are great seducers.
He was telling me that he cared a lot about me and that he thought I was really amazing. He told me once that he had never thought he was going to have another family again until he met me.
They have it. I wanted to show you these interviews that we did a while back with child molesters because it shows you and the rest of you who are watching how absolutely calculating they are in their seduction process of a child. Listen to this.
If I had thought about what I was doing to her and how it was affecting her, I wouldn't do it. So I had to manipulate my mind into making it that it really wasn't hurting her. The predator isn't the guy in the bushes picking up the kids off schoolyards. There is that, and that gets a lot of headlines. But it's people in your lives.
Most of my victims were, single mother environments, and I was step in and act like an adult, treat them, equally, and I would groom myself over a period, maybe a year or two, of masturbating to deviant fantasies about the young girl asking me to teach her. I would do little things like, part of grooming, wrestling with her, touching her accidentally, giving her hugs and little hen pecks, and just seeing each time how far I could go. And then at one point when I felt safe enough, I'd ask her, well, can I give you a big kiss, a French kiss, like an adult, or have you ever seen a penis, and would try to get her talking sex about her and, try to break down the barriers a little at a time, and every step was a step farther. And then if I felt that she reacted or was scared, then I'd back off from that particular girl and maybe look for a new girl.
Wow. That is exactly how they work. And they're thinking about themselves the whole time.
Yeah. And I wanted you to see that, and I wanted everybody who was watching who would judge you to see that. I want everybody who's ever been judged to see that, to understand that it is a calculated process of seduction. And everybody whose child has ever been abused or who's ever been abused should know this, that many years later, as a full adult in my 40s, I went to my father to explain to my father that I could no longer come to his house if he was going to have his brother there who had been one of my molesters. And my father, in my 40s, which is not too long ago, said to me, I want to know, I just want to know. I never really understood what happened. Did he rape you? And I turned to my father and I said, Dad, I was 14 and he was 40. So it doesn't matter if he raped me. It doesn't matter if I had taken my clothes off and ran buck naked and sat on his head, because he was the adult. And as the adult, he had the responsibility, if I was buck naked, to say, put your clothes on.
Exactly.
To say, put your clothes on. And so you should not spend your life blaming yourself because you were seduced. You were seduced. You were a child and you were seduced into believing that it was something that it was not.
Yeah.
And that's what the face of child molestation and sexual abuse is in this country. It's not torture and horror and, oh my God, painful. It is sexual seduction. And once you were seduced, you start to think, oh my God, what did I have to do with it? And maybe I love him and maybe he loves me.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And then you feel ashamed, and then you carry that shame for however long it is you carry that shame, and you allow that shame to affect the way you feel about yourself and your self-esteem and the way you trust other people. And that is the power of sexual abuse. That's what it does. And I want everybody to know that is what it does. So when my producers told me about this next story, my mouth dropped open. I'm sure yours will too. And pure, it's hard to believe. It was a cruel twist of fate and a dreadful mistake. We're talking about mistakes you can't take back today. One young man desperately wishes that he could take back. Dwight Samples is in a Florida prison right now, serving a 4-year sentence. And he says his punishment is nothing compared to the life sentence of guilt, of shame, and of grief that he lives with every day. During the holiday season, just outside Orlando, Florida, 21-year-old Dwight Samples stopped at a red light on his way home from work. As he waited for the light to change, another car pulled up beside him. When the light turned green, the two drivers took off. Linda O'Berry was driving on the same highway that fateful night.
The boys were drag racing. The two cars flew by me like I was standing still, and I could see them darting in and out of traffic.
As Dwight raced through the night, Diane, a 45-year-old mother of 2, merged onto that same highway. Also in the car was her elderly friend, Vivian Green. They were out looking at the holiday lights. Suddenly, Dwight slammed into the car, carrying the 2 women.
My heart stopped when I saw there was an accident.
Corporal Gabe Rhodes was called to investigate.
It was one of the worst accidents I've ever seen. He skidded for just over 300 feet before he hit the vehicle. The length of the skid marks showed that the vehicle was traveling over 100 miles an hour, so fast that it temporarily lifted both vehicles off the ground. The rear end of the lady's vehicle had been pushed in all the way to the back seat, shoving the front seats forward into the windshield. I knew they were killed instantly.
I was one of the first witnesses on the scene, and I also happened to be a nurse, so I tried to assist. The impact broke both their necks. I saw Dwight getting out of his car running to help the people that he just hit. He had a very bad gash across his forehead and down his nose. He was bleeding profusely. He kept telling everybody to please go help the people in the car.
It was then that Dwight looked inside the car and got the shock of his life. The shock was the driver of that car, one of the 2 victims, was his own mother. Dwight's mother, Diane, never knew what hit her. At the accident scene, the tragedy continued to unfold. Devastated by what he discovered, Dwight made a desperate attempt to save his mother.
He's trying to yank the door open, and he's looking down. He said, "It's my mom. I don't need help. Someone go help my mom. Please, somebody go help my mom."
Dwight recounted those painful memories from prison.
I couldn't open the door, and I sat there and just beat on the window and beat on the window. I just wanted to get in there and help her the best I could.
Frantic and terrified, Dwight called his father.
He said, "Daddy, it's Mom. I've killed Mama." When I got to the scene, he had already been airlifted, and I went to the car and it just basically fell apart. I just went to pieces.
Dwight spent the next several days in the hospital, overcome with guilt. His brother Doug never left his side.
Dwight had turned to me and just said, "I'm sorry about Mama."
The family buried Diane on Christmas Eve, but it would just be the beginning of their heartache. Dwight was facing up to 30 years in prison for 2 counts of vehicular homicide, one for the death of his mother, the other for her passenger, Vivian Green.
I can say I hoped they would be more lenient because of his mother, but deep down inside, I knew they wouldn't.
After months of negotiations, the prosecution offered Dwight a deal.
You understand that, right, Dwight?
Yes, sir. He had a plea for me of 4 years in prison, 15 years probation.
But Dwight's dad and brother believed the sentence was still too harsh.
I can only imagine what it would be like to place your hands on a windshield of a car and seeing your mother laying there dead in the front seat. That tears me up more than anything in the world, to know that he had to go through that. And now he's being punished for that.
This broken family endured yet another gut-wrenching blow when they had to watch Dwight leave for prison.
It was goodbye. It was goodbye to the brother that I've always known. It was goodbye to the friend. Losing Dwight affected me just as much as losing my mother.
I've lost a complete family.
Dwight says he will live the rest of his life haunted by the day he can never take back.
There are moments in every day that I will spend probably telling myself, why did you do this? Why did you make this mistake? I cannot live this grief down. I just can't do it.
So your son, Dwight, was he drag racing?
Yes, he was.
He was drag racing.
Yes, he was.
Has an accident, hits the car, and the victim is his mother in the car.
Yes, ma'am.
In the car. It's really kind of unimaginable.
Oh, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
To say the least.
What has been the most difficult for you as his father?
The loss of a wife, and the loss of him being away. But it doesn't get any better. I guess you just kind of adapt to it.
Mm-hmm. And 4 years is too long?
I feel that it is.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that I know a justice system is put in place to, because it has to be there.
Yeah, because the
world.
obvious question is if it hadn't have been your mother and had been somebody else's mother, 4 years wouldn't be too long.
Right. Well, in this situation, it was just that I don't think you can ever punish him, rehabilitate him, anything that our justice system is set up to do. I don't think that no one can do that the way that the fact of pressing your face against that windshield and seeing your mother and seeing what you have done that's life altering. That would change his life more than the Department of Corrections could ever change his life.
Mm-hmm. But he still deserves to be punished?
I think Dwight is
Does he not deserve to be punished for the crime that he committed?
Yes, that he does.
Okay. And you think what?
I think that he needed to be punished, and I think that something needed, because in fact what he did do was out of line. It was against the law.
Mm-hmm. And that's what happens when you do that kind of thing. You can kill people.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's a situation of circumstance of my mother being in the car, and just that it doesn't make the crime or what happened any less serious, but it
feels tragic.
Exactly.
Yeah, feels tragic. So how do you all get through with the weight of it? It feels tragic and weighted.
It's hard to deal with. There's so many different angles from, losing my mother kind of, I don't know how many people has lost their mother. That's in itself is hard enough to deal with, but then to add everything else in with it being my brother, and then going straight from the loss of my mother to then the loss of my brother, to the justice system, and just watching my family basically come apart.
Fall apart. And how is he in jail?
He's a changed person. Dwight was one of the people that used to be the life of the party. He was always the clown, the joker, the guy who made everybody laugh. Just to be in the room with him would make you feel good. And now just being around him depresses you. And I don't think that's so much as where he's at, because, you adapt to your environment, and I can see through him. I can see through past even the front that he tries to put on for us in the visitation.
Yeah. You're the attorney, right?
Yes, ma'am.
4 years, that seems, the plea bargain, that's a decent amount of time to serve.
In light of Florida law, it is, because in Florida they operate under a sentencing guideline system, points for the type of crime, points for the harm to the victims. And for 2 counts of vehicular homicide, the guidelines mandated a minimum 19-year prison sentence to a maximum of 30. So the state of Florida tried to find a balance.
Balance. You think your mother is in heaven sobbing every day over Dwight?
Yes, I do. My mother is being tormented, as we all are. We were a very close family, and if one thing could affect my mother at all, it was her children. I had a very, very close relationship with my mother, and Dwight probably had even closer relationship with my mother. I know that for anybody to, to even say anything bad about one of us would just torment her. It's a natural mother's instinct, I guess, and she was truly a
So you
mother
think her
of
soul
love.
is not at peace with this?
Not until we're back together as a family again.
Thank you both. What was the worst mistake of your life you wish you could take back, but you cannot? Samantha Babcock says that she was simply trying to avoid a hassle when she decided not to put her young daughter in a car seat. It is a mistake she wishes she could take back every single day. This is a story every parent should hear. Samantha Babcock and her children, 7-year-old Daniel and 2-year-old Isabel, accepted a ride home from a friend, even though her friend did not have a car seat. Her hasty decision is a mistake she wishes she could take back.
At first, I had my daughter in my lap. We had seatbelts on. At that time, my daughter was picking on my son while he was sleeping, and so I wanted to move her.
So Samantha unbuckled the seatbelt she shared with her daughter and moved to the floor of the car.
I was trying to readjust them and put seatbelts on both the kids. And the next thing I hear is a smash.
Back at the scene of the devastating accident, Samantha recounted those painful memories.
And then we began rolling. About 25 times it said that I was thrown 60 feet from the car. All I remember seeing is glass all over the highway.
But despite her injuries, there was only one thing on her mind.
I need to find my babies, because if I flew out of the car, my babies flew out as well. I saw my daughter's blanket that she was wrapped in the middle of the highway. And I ran to the blanket, and she wasn't there.
And I was just screaming, my babies, somebody help me. Please help me find my babies.
A passerby called 911, and the paramedics found her children. They had been thrown over a 50-foot overpass. Miraculously, her son had minimal damage, but her daughter was in grave condition.
The police report said she was DOA. I checked myself out of the hospital to go tell my daughter goodbye. And I told her I was sorry. That I was so, so sorry. That Mommy loves her. And I'm gonna miss her. She died July 8th. Last year, I was charged for my daughter's death. I was arrested, fingerprinted, booked for not putting a car seat in the car. I don't blame necessarily anybody but myself because I did have the choice.
My baby, my little baby.
All right. I know that there are many of you mothers out there watching right now who have done this very same thing. So let this be a lesson for all of us. What was going through your mind when you made the decision not to
I knew
use the
it
car seat?
was the wrong decision to begin with, but I had to get home. I had to get home. And so I decided to go ahead and go without the car seat. And this is how I live today because of it.
Samantha says that was one of the few times her daughter had been in a car without a car seat.
Very true.
Right.
Normally, I wouldn't go anywhere without a car seat. Of course, there's a block away that everybody
chances that. I know there are lots of people watching right now who've done it. It's only a block, it's just the store, only gonna take a minute. By the time you go through all the trouble to get the car seat in the car, I could have been there and back. All of those things that you rationalize,
But
that now you wished you hadn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I wish to God I would have went with my first instinct.
That was a split decision that you made, not to put in the car seat, and you've not been able to forgive yourself?
I'll never forgive myself. It's my baby. And I had the choice. And nobody realizes that everybody has that choice. But a lot of people don't, not that they don't care, they don't think about it. They don't sit down and really think about what could happen.
Think through the consequences, yeah.
I have to live it now. The consequence of me not thinking and putting a car seat in the car.
And what do you want to say to parents?
If there's ever a time that you can't or you don't have a car seat, do not get in that car, that vehicle. Do not do it. I don't care where you're at, what you have to do, because my baby's gone because I didn't think at all about the consequences of anything. Everybody says, oh, it'll never happen to me. Well, it happened to me. So it can happen to anybody, any one of you. You could be here right now.
Well said, well said.
And I just thank you for the opportunity to be able to send a message out to everybody on how important it is and to think twice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, you know, all of us have pains in our life, and sometimes the pains are deeper than others, but all pain is the same. And all of us can choose to do whatever we want with our pain. And you being here today to take this horrible story of you're making a mistake, of split-second decision not to use a car seat and losing your daughter because of it. You've taken the spirit of your daughter and turned that pain into power, because you're going to save a lot of people. This show reaches millions of people around the world, and you may never know, or maybe you will. Maybe somebody will write or email or whatever. But the spirit of your daughter will abide with you forever, will abide with you forever. And her death will not be in vain because of what you did today.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you to all my guests today who shared their stories, and I hope you learned from their irreversible mistakes, particularly instinct. That little funny feeling that says, I don't know. Listen to your own inner voice. Thanks, everybody.